This Korean tourist is eating and suddenly a Chinese man behind her takes her bowl away, asking her to come drink at their table. She refused, and in the end, the workers there returned her bowl. This tiny moment, this simple interaction, what does it really say about how women are viewed in China? Is it just one ignorant man, or what gives him the courage, the audacity, to think that he can do this somehow in broad daylight? Because this wasn't even the worst thing that's happened to women recently in China. For example, in 2022, 4 girls were eating barbecue in a restaurant in Tianjin City. One man tried to approach them and ask them to eat together, to drink, but when they refused, the men got angry. And then they were surrounded, mobbed, dragged, beaten so brutally that they were sent to the hospital. Their current conditions still unknown to this day. The media, the government, and the police protected the gang, even though they were arrested eventually. They didn't reveal how dire the situation was with the victims. And then there was the chained mother, a woman locked up like livestock, a case the Chinese netizens called today that this was the breaking point of a society already collapsing. It shook the entire country. A society where gender imbalance is normal. Men are more cherished than women. Where violence against women is often hidden behind a veil of good looks. Women are rising up. They're making money. And they're demanding dowries now. To me, the truth is that women's status in China depends entirely on class. The CCP claims women hold up half of the sky. But if anything, the year 2025 exposed that very hypocrisy. It was actually the year of massive gaps between privileged women and everyone else. You had the rich daughters, for example, here, a celebrity flaunting their 18-year-old graduation jewelry that cost more than most people's yearly salary. You also had a mysterious Chinese woman in Australia named Yang Lanlan driving a Tiffany blue Rolls-Royce, skipped physical court appearances after a drunk driving incident that put someone in the hospital. You have a Chinese doctor from a top medical program who felt entitled enough to refuse to finish a surgery because she was fighting with her doctor boyfriend. And yet, that girl was able to get co-authored in medical reports from some of the best doctors in the country. And these women became the CCP's poster faces for women's equality. But that's not real equality. That's simply access to power, borrowed through wealth, family, or connections. In other words, these women will be nothing without their connections. It sounds like I'm discounting these successes here. No, I'm not. I'm far from that. But the objective fact is that nepotism, power, and money often plays a much bigger role than pure female talent in China. Take a recent modeling competition show, for example. Now, these are the winners of various provinces. This girl is from the northern provinces. While she isn't ugly or anything, what broke the Chinese internet is that in those provinces, they're known for beautiful girls, pretty and tall girls. And unfortunately, the winner is supposedly this average figure. And here's the one from Guangdong. That's when things start to get ridiculous. Yeah, I don't think the show is rigged at all, right? Here's one from Hong Kong, also apparently not rigged. And here is the overall winner of the 28th International Modeling Competition in China. Yeah, I think the videos speak for itself. Next, let's talk about the CCP's empowerment of women. Now in China, it's very normal for women to ask for a house, a car, and a wedding gift in the form of a bride price or dowry. Essentially, you pay it to the bride's family. And there's some lucky numbers. For example, 188888, which sounds like a homonym for getting rich in Chinese, which is fa 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 fa. So that's 188,000 yuan, or around 26,000 USD. Some provinces double that because, well, they're from a rich area, say in Shanghai. 188,000 becomes around 350,000. But this material wealth that the woman gains, is it the same as fundamentally arguing about equality? Or is that even a measurement of success at that? You know, China under the CCP has never produced a female paramount leader. Japan and South Korea, both similar in the Confucian culture, have had currently or in the past a female leader in power. Now, it's actually in the fact that the CCP's own one-child policy decision further exacerbated the gender gap to begin with. Again, while this isn't an argument to say that having women in power is the necessary indicator, it is a great representation still, for the simple fact that the other countries don't create artificial claims or even systems and associations to proclaim that their women are better now. They simply just do it better. But China does have those claims. For example, here's one. China has an All-China Women's Federation. This organization that's supposed to represent all China's women's empowerment, I guess, supposedly, protecting women's rights. They've been silent on major social issues involving a female. For example, the chained mother, the Peng Shuai tennis star situation, the Tianjin attack I mentioned, countless domestic violence cases, and mothers who are, like in this video, begging for justice after medical negligence. And their association, or the role of it, is purely symbolic. Their power is symbolic, their protection is symbolic, and nowhere is this clearer than in entertainment, where the idea of this hidden rule, I did a video on this, I'll link it here. It's so rampant, right? It's essentially like the equivalent of the Chinese Harvey Weinstein rule. And before we continue, I just want to talk about something interesting. Recently on X, because of the new function that reveals where this account is based, we found out that many Chinese CCP shills and also their officials are using VPN to scale the firewall and to use American social media to try to dominate the narratives, while the regular folks in China don't really get to use the free access to the internet. And some people are like, oh, well, VPNs are, very common in China. Well, not if you use VPN to post something on X or other social media, and that can be used as evidence to punish you back in China. So there's really no free internet access to the free web. But here's a solution. So I recently was approached by a group of Chinese American engineers who are working exactly on that purpose, which is to fund and supply a series of direct links to Chinese internet users so that they can one-click and access the free web without the fear of being caught using the VPNs and whatnot. Well, this is super important because one of the best ways to fundamentally reject the Chinese Communist Party is through this idea of learning what's really happening outside of the firewall. And to do so, you really need to have a massive amount of funding, which is why I'm calling out for this campaign to help support the cause. For every $2,000, you get to create 100 links for tens of thousands of people to access the free web unlimited for 30 days. And this is, again, a very expensive operation, but it's one where I can get behind, and I'm sure you guys will too. And so the idea here is that you want to amplify those people who get to access the world and see what's really going on. And in turn, they can understand that fundamentally the CCP is lying to them. So if you want to support this cause, click the link in the description and support us with a tax-deductible donation today. And you will also get real usage reports to see where money is being put into and what's being used and what's not. So thank you so much for supporting this cause, and click the link today to help us with the donation.
第62届金马奖最佳女主角得奖的是蒂姆范冰冰。
So at the Golden Horse Awards this year in Taiwan, Fan Bingbing won Best Actress for her role in Mother Boomy. But she couldn't show up. Not because she didn't want to, but because she couldn't. She's from mainland China, she's a Chinese actress. Fan Bingbing used to be China's biggest star. And now she's a ghost, blacklisted, erased. Official reason was because tax evasion. Unofficial reason, well, she became inconvenient to some people. In China, a woman's downfall doesn't require proof, it's just timing to certain things that happen in the political system. And after a Taiwanese director expressed hope for Taiwan's independence in 2018, Beijing cut ties with the Golden Horse entirely, and since then, they've been boycotting the show. So instead of celebrating a Taiwanese woman's success, actually multiple Taiwanese women, since they claim that Taiwan is a part of China, they didn't celebrate Tsai Ing-wen's win to become the president. They didn't celebrate having a current female vice president in Taiwan right now. And so when one woman spoke the truth, they boycotted the entire show. And another woman who won the biggest award of her life, she couldn't accept it in person. But in her acceptance speech, she was crying because since about the same time in 2018, she's been blacklisted in China. And while there's some speculations that she was tied up with the CCP official who has suffered a power loss, and therefore she couldn't be protected. While this is true in most of the cases, I think there's much deeper reasons when it comes to the entertainment industry. I also did a specific video on this, so I'll link it here as well. And last year, I also made another video about how China has failed women in a different form. In that video, which I'll link again, I talked about how an Olympic athlete was forced to make dancing videos after retiring. She was in gymnastics. And while trying to work on these charitable causes, she realized that she needed to make a living, and so she signed up with a talent agency for live streaming and making videos. And there she has to make these thirst trap dance videos, but she was condemned in China. Now, it's sort of hypocritical for the CCP to do this because, which I'll talk about next, is their culture on sex and mistresses. But again, there's a whole other topic too about how extreme China's gymnastics trainings are, the selections to create these Olympians. And then basically after they retire because of injuries or just age, they're never taken care of. And so it's not just gymnastics, by the way. There's also weightlifting and diving, any of those like very technical sports, right? So women who sacrifice everything only to be blamed for wanting too much. And the truth becomes clearer the more you look at it. Women in China can reach the stars in the sense that as long as they have somebody to support them through the backing of a political power, they can be somewhere that they can be used to be promoted as a symbol of success for women. But in reality, there's no substance, because as long as they don't challenge the people standing behind the curtain or those that protect them are there still with power, they're okay. So you have scientists, you have astronauts, you have individuals, right? CEOs, pop idols, they exist, but none of them hold real power. Not as individuals, not as the so-called, Western perceptions of equality for women, or even, the idea of women's rights. The only woman in contemporary China who's ever gotten close to actual power is Mao's last wife, Zhang. And even then, she didn't really rule. She was kind of borrowing the influence of Mao Zedong during the Cultural Revolution, the authority from this the husband to kind of rule the Gang of Four. Every other female official in the CCP has been a decorative symbol. Never decisive, never had any real power. China claims it is one of the safest countries for women, but every few months we get new footage that says otherwise. For example, in this video, a woman enters her apartment. Soon after, a tattooed man shoves her in, and who knows what actually happened inside the room. He comes out again, gets the mail. She doesn't. What happened to the daughter too? Now, media reports says it was her ex-husband. They recently had a divorce. And yes, he was punished, but not before she and her daughter were beaten. And then there's also a man named Zhang, a serial rapist who drugged and assaulted at least 10 women across the UK and China, suspected of attacking as many as 50. What happened to the traditional virtues or those Confucian values guiding the men in China? What happened to the culture and the morality side and harmony of traditional Chinese teachings? Well, let me tell you what. This has to do with the modern perception of women, what they are in China. Now, the pattern starts with the CCP's culture mostly governing men. And it really started with the CCP officials in the early days, like Mao Zedong, who had multiple marriages, like 4 different wives, mistresses. There's some books that actually talks about the extreme side of the affairs that Mao would have. But they're in Chinese. The earlier so-called revolutionary leaders in China remarried multiple times for different purposes or reasons, I guess. For example, in the early days of Yan'an, it was considered this restructuring of the revolutionary leaders. So they would convince a lot of these girls to marry those CCP leaders. The comrades needs a comfort in their new stage of revolution, I guess. For example, Liu Shaoqi married 5 times, Zhu De 4 times, Mao 4 times, and so many others did. And then later, obviously, they got remarried again because now that the CCP is in power, for different reasons, right? Next step of the revolution or whatever it was. So they created this culture for men to have mistresses. In fact, in the CCP today, almost every official has that chance to get some. And in fact, the prettier one you get, the more famous they are, it's like a showing off, right? And so they get money, they get promoted. And then there's this like running joke, but I think it's kind of true, is that once they get promoted and once they have money, they hope that their current wives would die so that they can get a younger one or upgrades to different mistresses. And while this happens, China also operates one of the world's largest sex economy. Prostitution, in KTVs, you have those kind of things as well. Mistresses, overseas mistresses and their grand mansions, officials keeping multiple different women, sugar babies, live stream performers, influencers too. And it's like there's this real commodity. And also when it comes to the gender gap, we're talking about how America also has these stuff, right? OnlyFans and whatnot. It's really not the same because in China, the gender gap creates a lot of demand for the men. Also part of the societal pressure because of, you have to pay so much money to marry this girl. A lot of them turn to this very empty online sort of consumption of those kind of entertainment. And The second one is it really serves the state. They say that officially prostitution is illegal in China, and they have these like busts, right? The police will come to these like KTV stations or clubs and they bust the prostitutes. But those are kind of like symbolic busts or like performative busts. They're not really, because the police chief is like there too, right? And then the third one, I think, is this idea that there's almost a system that benefits those people to have a culture for this, because at the end of the day, like, it is part of what amplifies their materialistic instinct and what their physical desires are. And it's good to control them because that's part of the corruption inside the party. Thank you so much for watching this episode and hope you enjoy it. We'll see you next time. And thank you so much for watching this episode. If you have any thoughts about it in the comments, let me know, and I would much appreciate to have your input. And also, let me know what other topics you want me to cover in the comments as well. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.